guys, so today, that's
Hi.
Yasha's. Hi. Okay, you can get out of the
Hey,
video.
no.
So I thought I would take Christine's tag and put a little spin on it. So instead of doing books that kind of inspire me, I thought I would just do a bookshelf tour because, I mean, most of these books, I don't usually buy books, as you guys know. There are libraries. So I thought that I would just show you a bookshelf tour of books that I really, really like. And, you know, if I've bought these books, it's because they inspire me to some extent. So the first book that I bought that is on my bookshelf is I Am Malala. So I thought this book was really, really inspiring. Monica, I know that you own this book as well. It's basically about a 16-year-old girl who's fighting for education with the Taliban and everything, and she's fighting for women's rights. I finished it. It was for an English project, but I decided to read this book on my own. And I guess it just showed me that even though we're considered young people, it doesn't really matter, because that doesn't mean that we can't make a difference and that we can't care about the world around us. A lot of times I feel like teenagers don't really care about politics because they feel like it has nothing to do with them, and so they kind of stop paying attention to the world. But I think that this book definitely proves that you can make a difference. Now I'm gonna kind of take a different turn. A lot of books on my shelf are actually old literature. Jane Eyre. I bought this at Barnes & Noble for $4.95. That's another great thing about classic novels, is that you don't really have to pay a lot of money for them. Jane Eyre is basically the story of, well, I'll just read it from the back. Poor and plain, Jane Eyre begins life as a lonely orphan in the household of her hateful aunt. Despite the oppression she endures at home and the later torture of boarding school, Jane manages to emerge with her spirit and integrity unbroken. She becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall, where she finds herself falling in love with her employer, the dark, impassioned Mr. Rochester. But an explosive secret tears apart their relationship, forcing Jane to face poverty and isolation once again. One of the world's most beloved novels, Jane Eyre is a startlingly modern blend of passion, romance, mystery, and suspense. When you start off reading it, it's really depressing. Jane has been through a lot of tribulations throughout her life. In the 21st century, we would categorize as emotional abuse, but it's surprisingly really good. Charlotte Bronte is the author, and Jane, even though she's a couple centuries old, is a character that I think we can all identify with, especially women. Jane is constantly controlled by the men in her life, and she kind of fights that. So it's really, really good. I would definitely recommend reading it. Jane is just, you know, she's a really admirable woman. It does have romance, so if you're into that, you know, I would definitely read it. So another classic that I'm going to talk about is To Kill a Mockingbird, one of my favorite books. I read this in 8th grade. I'm assuming that both of you know what To Kill a Mockingbird is about. I don't know if you guys like it as much as I do, but I am in love with this book. I got it at a flea market for 50 cents, so that was really cool. This is just one of my go-to books when I'm looking for something meaningful. And this is one of the first classic novels that I read that I definitely fell in love with. A couple more classics to go, just bear with me a little bit. Little Women. Jo is definitely my favorite character because she's the adventurous one, and I find that I can relate to her a lot. In the 21st century, Jo would definitely flourish, but you know, back then it wasn't as acceptable for women to be boyish or like a tomboy or whatever. I've always wished that I had a sister, and the relationship between these girls is just amazing. Rory and Jo should have totally ended up together. Amy was a brat, but I will always come back to this book. Really good relationship between the sisters that I wish I had, but I guess I'll just have to deal with Yasha's. This novel, a lot of people have had difficulty reading, and that is Pride and Prejudice. The first time I tried to get through this novel, I couldn't do it. I was extremely bored. Jane Austen is kind of a weird writer. She has good stories, but I mean, the writing is different. I think when you're reading classic novels, it's a completely different writing style, so you kind of have to get used to that before you take the plunge. So I would definitely recommend reading other books and then coming back to this. Second time around, I loved this book. You know, if you are still not fond of this book, I would definitely check out the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which is a modern day adaptation, and it's so funny. Elizabeth Bennet is definitely my favorite character in Pride and Prejudice. I identify a lot with her. She's really, really witty. But yeah, I'm definitely a mix of Lizzie and Darcy, because Lizzie, in terms of like humor, you know, we both kind of laugh off situations, but Darcy, in terms of pride, once someone injures my ego, it's really, really hard for me to let them get back on my good side. I actually bought this in the oldest bookstore in Maine. It's called Sherman's Bookstore. The romance is just so cute. I wanted Darcy. The Lizzie Bennet Diaries is one of my favorite modern day adaptions and was actually what inspired me to start vlogging. So this book will always have a special place in my heart. So the next few books that I'm going to talk about are like darker classics. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is Catcher in the Rye. A lot of people are turned off by it. Like, oh, this is just a spoiled rich white boy who's complaining about his life and he doesn't really have anything to complain about. And, I mean, to an extent, they're right, but there was just such an emotional depth to the story that I really, really liked. And I was definitely not used to the writing style. You know, the stream of consciousness thing, we don't really see that in a lot of books today. And I think a part of me got the way that he felt. You know, I think all of us have felt lonely at some point in our life. Really, really enjoyed it, and that's why I bought it. The next dark classic that I'm going to talk about is The Essential Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I have not finished this book yet. Edgar Allan Poe was a very interesting man. For me, I got introduced to unreliable narrators through Edgar Allan Poe. It's really, really beautiful, and I kind of wish we still talk like this sometimes. My favorite poem probably has to be Annabel Lee or The Raven. One of the most memorable stories that I've read by him is either A Telltale Heart or The Cask of Amontillado. I think I really enjoyed The Cask of Amontillado. And the last classic novel that I'm gonna talk about is, drumroll please, Les Mis. Oop, wrong way. Les Mis! All three of us are obviously obsessed with Les Mis, and I am not through the story yet, but it's really, really hard to get through. It's like 1,000 pages or something. The writing in here is just beautiful. The Broadway show is amazing, but I feel like even that doesn't do complete justice to the book. For example, Cosette and Marius, it wasn't a love at first sight kind of thing. It was like they kept seeing each other over the period of a couple months, and that's how they slowly fell in love. And I feel like that's very realistic. So there's so much richness to this book. I'm gonna read a passage to you that I really like. Okay, I found the passage. It's basically talking about Marius and how he's dreaming, and this is basically what it says. In this condition of reverie, an eye which could have looked into Marius' soul would have been dazzled by its purity. In fact, were it given to our eye of flesh to see into the consciousness of others, we should judge a man much more surely from what he dreams than from what he thinks. There is will in the thought, there is none in the dream. The dream, which is completely spontaneous, takes and keeps, even in the gigantic and the ideal, the form of our mind. Nothing springs more directly and more sincerely from the very bottom of our souls than our unreflected and indefinite aspirations towards the splendor of destiny. In these aspirations, much more than in ideas which are combined, studied, and compared, we can find the true character of each man. Our chimeras are what most resemble ourselves. Each one dreams the unknown and the impossible according to his own nature. I mean, that's beautiful. What I would give to write sentences like that. I'm really enjoying reading the story. I have to get back. Okay guys, I promise I'm almost done. I'm just gonna talk about two contemporaries. Anna and the French Kiss. It's basically a romance, I mean, obviously, about Anna, who is a student. For her senior year, her dad transfers her from Atlanta to a school in Paris for American students, and she meets Etienne St. Clair, and it's basically about their story and how they fall in love. Whenever I need a good romance to cheer me up about being forever alone, this is what I read. I've read it a couple of times. Stephanie Perkins was described as the 21st century Jane Austen. So you want to hug this book and like make out with it. That's weird. Okay. And the last contemporary that I'm going to talk about that Christine has already mentioned in her video is The Book Thief. This is my favorite book of all time. I have read a lot of books. Monica, shame on you for not reading it. Christine, good job, I guess? I don't know. I've been trying to make you read it for a while, but I'm glad you finally did. I'm a writer myself, and it is really hard to make each page count. But Marcus Zusak does exactly that. He believes that there is a gem that can be found on every page, and I just thought that was a really cool idea. You identify with all the characters almost immediately. I don't think that we would care as much about the characters if it wasn't for the elevated style of writing, which I don't normally pick favorites, but this is definitely the #1 book of all time. Okay, well, that's it for my bookshelf tour. I also got a couple of books from the library that I guess I can talk about. So I have been irritated with a lot of female leads in young adult literature recently. That is why I got Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, and I also got Is Everyone Hanging Out With Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling. Both really, really good females. What? That made no sense. I haven't read this one yet. Tina Fey's Bossy Pants is hilarious though. I'm also getting the audiobook so that I can hear it in her voice. Really, really funny. I mean, if you're looking for something that goes beneath the surface, this isn't really the book for you. It shows that women can be, you know, powerful and funny and smart. Tina Fey is now kind of my idol. It's really refreshing because you automatically like her and kind of identify with her. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who's looking for something to make you like bust your gut from laughing. And the last book that I got from the library that I really want to talk about is Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I mean, look at that cover. Like, that is beautiful. It's basically by Laini Taylor. I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't normally read fantasy. I normally read realistic fiction, contemporaries. I mean, I read fantasy too, but it's not my go-to genre. But I'm really, really enjoying this. And it's basically about a 17-year-old student named Karu. She lives in Prague, which is the capital of the Czech Republic. Angels and demons, which sounds like a reoccurring theme, but it's totally different. Karu's kind of a badass. It's really cool. I'm enjoying it so far, and this is the first book in a trilogy, so hopefully I will continue to read these books and enjoy it, but I'm only like 200 pages through right now. Guys, sorry, this was a really, really long video. I'll let you guys go. I was thinking that we could do a booksplosion of the month, which is basically where we pick one book and we read it for the entire month, and after that month is over, we have a discussion. We could do it like Google Hangouts or whatever, and do like a live stream, I guess. I don't know what you guys want to do. I don't know if you're even interested in that idea because I know that school's coming up for all of us. Monica, you're going to college for the first year, so I don't know if that's too much pressure to read one book in a month. I can do it easily, but I don't know how fast you guys are or if you have the time. Let me know what you think. I think it would be really cool because I love reading books already, and I mean, discussing them with my friends is just a bonus. Monica, I'm looking forward to seeing your bookshelf tour. Christine, I liked yours a lot. Anyway, I'm gonna go now. Christine, I'll see you on Wednesday.